Hey guys, I'm here with Dr. Christian Bogner. Today we have Brooke, who is a mom um, who I met and has done some work with the microbiome balancing. And we're going to get a chance to hear from her perspective some of the things that she's noticed while doing that, and maybe some of the other interventions that she's done in the past. So thanks so much for being here, Brooke. Really appreciate you having the courage and taking the time to just kind of share your experience.
Yeah, and Brooke, thanks from my side as well. Maybe to start, give us an overview about your family, where you're from, and then how you got to know Alex, and then, obviously what you have done and what you have observed to share your journey. And thanks again.
Sure. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So I am a mom to four children. Been married. My anniversary was yesterday, 41 years.
Oh,
Married to my
congratulations.
Wow,
college sweetheart.
congrats.
Our fourth child is named James. He's 24. He has autism spectrum disorder. He regressed when he was about 21 months old. He was my fourth, so I knew he was typically developing. He was a lot later than the other three. He was 9 years after the third one. And one thing I didn't know, to be honest, was how much the vaccination schedule had changed in those 9 years. But needless to say, he was born and he was typically developing, had lots of lovely baby speak and playing games and all the things that you want your kid to do. He was a little bit delayed with his motor, his large motor. When I took him to Children's Hospital at age 21 months to be evaluated for his large motor, National Children's Hospital, they said all he had was benign hypotonia. There was no other issues apparent. And then between 21 months and about two, there was a big regression. And by the time he turned two in May, and by the end of the summer, the light had gone out of his eyes, and he was no longer responding to his name, and he was just really unhappy and sad. He didn't feel good. He couldn't talk. He'd been able to speak. I can't imagine what it would be like to be 2 years old and be able to speak, and then a few months later you can't speak. I mean, there's really nothing kind of more horrifying to think about. Well, there are more things horrifying, but it's in the top. But anyway, so we did what you guys did, you dads. We did every bit of speech, OT, and PT that could be done. We didn't make much of a dent. He stayed emotionally and socially pretty available. So even though he couldn't speak, he was able to play the little games that the therapist would do. But right around 4 or 5, the light dawned on me that this was very much a physical problem, that something had happened to him, like an injury. I think there was I know there was some heavy metal poisoning involved. He was a kid that got a lot of thimerosal. I was working with those early, Boyd Haley and Dr. Buttar, and learning all about that chelation and all those things. And so we started out hard and fast into the biomed world. And I will tell you, we did everything like you did, Christian. I mean, Alex, fortunately, your guy is younger, so you didn't maybe have to do as many crazy things. But I mean, we did all sorts of IVs of GSH, and I traveled all over tell you this, some of you old folks will know this. I saw Dr. Dirksen in Seattle, Washington. I saw Amy Yasko in Maine. I saw the Othmers for neurofeedback in California, and I saw Bradstreet in Florida. So I'd covered all four corners of the United States searching for help. And, a lot of it worked. A lot of it did take, but so much was back and forth and up and down, and so much just so hard physically on him. You try the supplements and you try this and that, and he'd feel good for a couple of days, then he wouldn't. And so much constipation, you guys. I mean, I think you all know that. That's such a hard thing for these children to suffer physically. But slowly but surely we did make progress. I mean, I was hard at it, and around 8 or 9, we got scoped by Dr. Kriegsman, but around 8 or 9, we finally began to get some control of the gut. He just wasn't in pain as much. I used to lie on the floor and, press his belly, and you could just see things started to clear up around 8. A lot of it was from, honestly, antifungal treatments. And he just got some affect, and he never lost his speech, but his speech would just come and go. And I think it's complicated, but I never understood why one day he could sort of He could sort of get some, 2 or 3 word phrases out. He could retrieve some words, and then another day he just couldn't. I mean, that's another thing that I think would be really hard, to have a brain that isn't reliable, have a central nervous system that's not reliable would be a horrible feeling. The big thing that changed, so we kept at the biomed, kept doing things. When he was 13, almost 14, he met Soma Mukhopadhyay, who's the developer of RPM, and he learned how to spell to communicate, and it changed everything. And the blessing of that was that it was a real gift. He was quick at it. It didn't take long. I often think it's because of all the biomed I did, honestly, is that he didn't struggle as much. So we were able to get him tested up to 8th grade in about 6 months by spelling to communicate his understanding of subjects. And by about age 16, he was at community college. Needs to go with an assistant, has to have somebody hold the board and scribe. But the community college did all the testing to make sure there was academic integrity. You will always find the doubters. So many people who think, oh, you're moving the board, or the person holding the board is making it up. I even had one school accuse me of having James's assistant be doing all the work for him. I said, what would be the point? I gain nothing from that. All I do is lose money. I mean, it was just such an interesting approach or, attitude. But anyway, so here we are running around. So right now he is 24 years old. He's a senior at George Mason University. He's an English major. He likes to write. We're going slow through school, not just because it takes more time to have to spell your answers, but also we're not sure what he's going to do when he graduates. So we're sort of just going 6 hours a semester. But backing up, here's life. It's looking pretty good for James. He's going to university. He can communicate with us, and his life is pretty good. But he still is, or was more so anxious and emotionally dysregulated and easily anxious. And he picks up on the energy of the room and be very regulated at college with his assistant. And then at home, if we were having a big family gathering, or if my grandchildren were coming over and they were unpredictable and there's noises and their behavior, he would just lose it. Losing it for him, I'll be honest, I want to protect him, but I think all of us with kids with autism know, but losing it for him would be he developed this kind of loud grunting noise. He developed it a long time ago. And I 100% know it's because he wasn't able to talk. So frustrating. So you develop something to, get your needs met. So he would use this large grunting sound, and really painful for the rest of the family, because as soon as the grunting started, we would just all get on edge. So I was always looking for something. I would say to people, if I could get rid of this anxiety, this grunting, this frustration, his life would be really pretty good, and so would ours. So right about, year and a half ago, no, not even a year ago. Well, we started March 27th. So I guess it was about this time last year, I was working with a mom who was doing work with the Documenting Hope Project, and she mentioned Alex. Alex, I got to say, she just kept saying, he's the nicest man, and he's a dad, and he'll answer your texts, and he takes time, and he's developed this protocol of gut balancing. So I put it in the back of my head, and you had to join through Facebook, and I don't remember. I don't love Facebook that much, but finally, in March, I wrote it down. We started the gut balancing protocol with Alex the week of March 27th, 2023. Sent off, the sample, and Alex generated the incredible, got it here, map, so to speak, of helping balance the gut. So I'm going to I want to read. I took notes. I have a diary. I'm going to talk to you about that. And then I'm going to talk to you about what happened when we added the thiol cream. But so I'm going to read these. The first week, James is tolerating things pretty well till the end of the week. It was, he was very sad on Wednesday morning, but I wasn't sure what it was related to. Now, something that's personal to our family, but it's important you all know this. During the last 5 years, our dear daughter-in-law had been fighting colon cancer. And that's a really hard thing. And James was struggling with it. And we were always trying to hide our deep emotions from him because we knew he wouldn't be able to handle it. I mean, if you think about it, if you can't really talk, even if you can use a board, just the ability to process things in the moment with people and share a sad thought, that's pretty much not available to them, even if they use a board. So this sad illness of our daughter-in-law was weighing heavily on our family. And it happened to be that she was getting very sick right when we started the gut balancing protocol. So anyway, so he's tolerating things, but he seems sad. It might be related to Meredith. I had to give histamine X. I can talk about that more later. This is a little gross, but had very large yeasty stools, lots of excessive urine Friday and Saturday, but I seemed to get him settled down by Monday morning. That's the first week. Then I say he's tolerating the herbs, although he's only getting about 80%. The first week, we had some very unusually calm mornings. Very calm, really relaxed. His assistant noticed it right away. The weekend was a little rougher, and we had one meltdown, but I gave lots of the supports that Alex recommended. The second week, much less side effects. We missed a morning dose by accident, and I will say it was a fantastic day. He's so regulated and calm. Before his friend Jake, who arrives, normally he's so stimmy because of his anticipation. He's very calm, relaxed. There's no OCD. He's smiling. He has such a calm body. I'm wondering if this is the protocol. Beginning of the third week, he gets slightly constipated, but we get moving again by the end of the week. He's calm, patient. People are dropping in on Friday night, which sometimes would throw him off, and he's so happy. He's exhibiting no signs of sensory overload. Big change on Saturday morning. He willingly did some small motor work with me. I'm always trying to help him get it more eye-hand coordination and just to improve his typing and his spelling. He willingly sat down at the kitchen counter with me to look at a kind of a color by number book that's small, but it helps him with his eye motor. And he said to me on the board, without any pressure, he grabbed the board, he handed it to me, and he said, this is really so hard to see, but I'll keep working. So, I mean, that's a big deal. To just initiate communication in the moment, it was just really nice. And then he proceeded to finish doing the coloring book, which is when you're 24, you don't want to do a coloring book, but he was doing it because I had asked him to practice his skills. Beginning of week 4, his assistant is saying he's clearer at school, he's calmer, he's initiating motor movements all on his own. He went down to his room to look for his wallet in his pants 2 times without anybody mentioning it to him. You know, these kids are smart. He's smart. He remembers, he might remember, oh, I left my wallet, but he can't make that first motor step. That initiation of that very first motor plan is what gets him stuck. It's called motor inertia. And I see it so much. And it's particularly frustrating. That's another thing that must be so frustrating to think, I know what I want to do, but my body won't do it. So he was able to just start making his own choices with his body. Again, like I said, going down and look for his wallet. We finished the 6-week program that Alex designed, and then we did the maintenance protocol, very similar to what we were doing, which was similar to what we've been doing. He continued to do well, particularly throughout a very difficult time for our family. Our daughter-in-law was dying of cancer, and we traveled to and from Kentucky 4 or 5 times with lots of sadness and tears, and he maintained a calm demeanor. He was able to fly to see her and say goodbye. He wrote her a beautiful goodbye letter, and his assistant read it to her. James kissed her and said goodbye, and he did not lose it. I had an appointment with Dr. Bogner on May 26th. He told me about the SDS cream and what was happening with it. I got some from Alex. We started it on June 9th. Sorry to make you cry. Sorry to say it. I actually started the cream the day Meredith died. I didn't realize that she died at 10 at night. I'd started the cream that afternoon. But I'll always remember the date. So 19 days into the cream, I obviously wasn't doing much writing after that for a while. But 19 days of the cream, he is so much more tolerant of people, emotions that they are having, and what they elicit in him. He is calmer. His mood is more stable. He's handled his brother and sister moving back home and the sadness of Meredith passing. It cannot be overstated how much more regulated he is in the midst of a very difficult time. that I contribute that 100% to the bile cream. It's very calm in the mornings. There's some stimulus in the evenings. He started new motor activities. He started rock climbing. He's doing excellently. He's doing excellent in his RPM sessions. He wanted, what was this? Oh, this was kind of nice. One night he kept asking me to make rice, chicken and rice for dinner, and I was putting him off because I was busy with something else. He went over to the cabinet, got the rice pot out, handed it to me, and said, chicken and rice, please. Which, again, just the idea that he could come up with that or do, it's not that he can come up, that he did it. And then I interviewed him on June 28th. I said, have you felt any changes since starting the cream? He said, yes, I feel calmer energy. I have more tolerance. And he said, my mood is a lot more in my control. July 7th, we went to visit my mother in Williamsburg. She's very old. We had a really stressful restaurant start where I was wanting to yell at the waiters, but I didn't. But James stayed very calm, and he sat for so much longer than usual. My mother was blown away. She saw a big change. He does not get motor inertia as much, where he knows what he wants to do. We're seeing a lot more initiation, decisions with his body. Removes himself from the room now when he's stressed. He's doing less asking, more doing. And he's had some bursts of more speech. He's got language, obviously, but verbal speech, I took notes. That has settled down a little bit, but I texted Alex a couple weeks ago, Alex, and I said, I'm getting these bursts of more verbal speech. One thing he said, his sister took him on a walk, and he said to her verbally, Jane, this walk is good for you. You need it. And that's a pretty long sentence. I mean, yeah, it's just interesting to see these bursts of things. I'd love to see more of that. So that was my little story.
I remember there was thank you so much, and sorry for your loss. I mean, that's just a really powerful story there. I remember there was a point that I think it was when you started to do the lotion and you were doing it for a while, that you saw kind of a dip in some of the some non-ideal behaviors coming. And I remember we were theorizing, hey, maybe we should take another look at the gut again, because the whole detoxification through that lotion, it can affect that system. And I think when we started the second round or something, you kind of saw an uptick or things kind of going in a better direction.
Well, I think we decided that we'd perhaps pushed his detox too much because I was giving him the cream was so fantastic. You think, let me just do this all the time. So I was applying it. I had gotten to the point where I was applying it 3 times a day. And I think we pushed. He actually had a burst of aggression. Aggression, it's typically not been a big problem, but with the anxiety, it can be something. What he developed when he was younger, little guy, when he couldn't talk, was just the hair pulling, that reaching out and grabbing. And that kind of, I think I called you sort of upset, like, wow, he's pulled my hair and he hasn't done that in ages and so forth. So when we backed off the cream and we did another round of started the second round of gut balancing, that really went away. I mean, I have to laugh, you guys. Everybody in the world knows this, right? He's been doing beautifully. He had a meltdown last night, just in time for this this interview. But yeah, I can, and I think the beauty of the gut balancing is you can kind of, you pulse it, drop it back. And of course, now I've I've taken away a lot of the herbs, and I'm doing just your gut guardian, which
a little simpler.
Yes, it makes it simpler. I'm still trying to sort that because I feel like I'm trying to still do some of the other herbs. And of course, I do what you said. I'm doing the prebiotics and the probiotics. But that seems like I'm really happy for the community to have that gut guardian and to have that ASD, the whatever your vitamin thing's called, because when those kids are little, it's so hard, and it just tastes wonderful. And I was able to teach James how to swallow caps when he was young, but it's tough. So that's a beautiful product.
Thank you. Yeah.
Wow. I know that in the past you've done a lot of testing. You've probably spent a lot of money, like all of us, right? With a whole bunch of different tests through all of these different practitioners. When you look back now, what would there be anything that you would be doing different in regards to, testing and this whole approach? What can you tell other parents, especially those who have done a lot of years of work and they have all of these abnormal tests? What is your opinion about that in regards to all of this testing and the different approaches that you've been going through?
Well, I think the testing, of course, can be very helpful and it's needed at times. I think and I did a lot of it, and actually one thing I left out, which I want to mention was significant treatment for James, was I did do Andy Cutler chelation. I did 122 rounds, 3 days, 122 times every 2.5 hours. And of course, I kept doing it because I kept seeing good things. But if you think about it, and you as the chemistry gentleman can talk to me about why that was happening, right? I'm using alpha lipoic acid and DSM, which is contributing to this thiol cycle, right? But anyway, I would say that chelation was really helpful, and I wouldn't have known about it had I not run a lot of the urine toxic metals and the fecal toxic metal tests. I feel like the oats and some of that Great Plains stuff, who's listening to this, I think I have to agree. I think they're behind the times. The thing that must be powerful about Alex's work is that he's using this new way of looking at the biome. It's just incredible. Because what I did? We used, antifungals, and we used antibiotics sometimes. What did I use? Ketoconazole was like my friend, very much so, because I could get him calm and unspacey for 2 weeks, but then it was just a never ending up and back and forth. And we used Vanco, a lot of Vanco, based on Clostridia. But again, I'm not sure. I've been reading, right, that Clostridia marker, that Clostridia test might not have been all that accurate. So I'm not sure. I guess what I would say to parents is use some of the tests. Don't feel like you have to do them all, and just keep really good notes and observations. I had a journal that I did for probably 3 or 4 years, where I had just 5 things I was looking at: his stool, his behavior, his speech, maybe mood. And I would just give it 1 to 5. I would write down everything we did that day. I'd have it pre-printed and I'd check it if we did it. And then I would give a 1 to 5 based on those 4 categories. So I could just see what's happening, what's getting better, what's getting worse. And that was just clinical observation. That seemed to me to become really, in some ways, more valuable than a lot of testing. But the docs like to do the testing. I get it.
Yeah, not anymore so much.
Yeah. So what else? I don't have a lot of therapies I absolutely regret. I liked the HBOT we did. Seemed like we were always, there were certainly some people that were ripping us off. And one more thing, I do think that you got to get them communicating, and that you should really try to, I wish James had started communicating sooner. And I had been told about Soma for years before and didn't think he needed it. But then again, waiting that long, I hate that he was trapped, but he also was able to quickly pick it up because he'd learned a lot and he was mature enough to do it. So I don't know. I don't know if I answered that properly.
Oh, no, it's.
No, wait, can I say one more thing? This is what I want to do. And you mentioned this. I want to go back to some of those therapies now that James's gut is more balanced. And now that we've got something happening better with his glutathione and his detox. That's it. His oxidative stress is what must be so much better. And I'd like to try some of these things now that's all working. So I've been thinking about that. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but maybe neurofeedback, or we tried that, but that was when he was quite young.
Yeah, in fact, I just talked to another parent last weekend, and he mentioned something very interesting. He said there are these oxidative stress strips that you can buy, and every time he feels anxious and he checks, he says his oxidative stress is very high, and then he treats himself. In that case, it was nice, and he always feels better, and he checks again, and it's much decreased.
So is it saliva or urine? How's he testing the oxidative stress?
I'm pretty sure it's urine. It's like one of these.
Okay.
I have to
Yeah,
find out more, but that might be something of interest to kind of measure.
I'm
more.
sure what's the other explanation for this big reduction in anxiety and like the so much more regulated?
I think it's just the decrease of the toxic burden, from the dysbiosis. Alex, I'm sure you can add to that. The histamine, the toxins, whenever there are toxins in the blood, there's an immune reaction, mast cells and oxalates and causing inflammation, cytokines. And so I think it's just what you have done with the gut balancing is, decrease that burden on the liver, and the liver can focus on keeping the blood clean. And if the blood is clean, there's no reason for any other organ to be inflamed, really. That's how I would explain it. But it's clear to me of what you have done is really change kind of the trajectory of his life, really, because you have probably decreased the toxic burden in his body that originated from his gut. I mean, it's clear. You've done the analysis. Alex has looked at it, corrected it, balanced it with the right appropriate herbs that were well researched in the literature, and here you are, raving about it, and it's incredible. And so, what's next for you, Brooke?
What's next for me is to get my other adult children out of my house. No, I think about that a lot. We're fortunate that we've been able to buy a house nearby that we hope for it is going to be James's, for a place for him to live with a friend and with some support for friends. It's 4 bedrooms. And I think our hope, our prayer, our plan is to get him to the point where he's motorically independent enough to live over there with he'll probably always need support, but not as much support as he gets here from his mom and dad. So he wants to do that. Emotionally, that's a big deal. But he has a social worker who he gets some Medicaid money, and he has to meet with a social worker twice a year to talk about his life. Fortunately, he can spell, and he said at the last meeting, he said, I feel like my life's really going in the right direction. And she said, what do you want as an adult? What do you want once you get out of college? And he said, I'd just like to work. He said about 4 to 6 hours a day, doing something where I can write. And then I'd like to exercise in the afternoon and have dinner with friends or family. And that's not asking too much. I don't think these kids have had to give up a lot of the things that we hoped and dreamed for ourselves. So I hope he can do that. I mean, some days it's hard and you can't imagine it because he does still need quite a bit of support. But this protocol is what's made me think, okay, we can do this. I do wonder, like both of you as fathers, you wonder who's going to make sure he's getting his gut balancing products. I mean, James actually takes his own supplements, but I set them out and then he goes and takes them in yogurt. But I make a big smoothie and I think, who's going to do all this? And so I guess we just keep planning and my husband does these business retreats every year where he just does a strategic plan. And I started doing the same thing for James about 5 years ago. Strategic plan. Where do I see him in 5 years? What do we hope? What does he want? How do we get there? So that's something I would encourage parents to do. Really try to have a little team around it. I know it helps when you've got people that aren't just the parents who can be a little more objective and weigh in and give you some perspective.
Oh,
you
amazing.
guys so little. you're Alex. You're
What does he like to write about?
Hey, well, I can tell you what he has a blog. This might be of interest to people. So when he first started using the letterboard and spelling, and things were coming out of him that were really I don't want to be amazing. I think all these kids are really bright, and I kind of get turned off by people saying, oh, my son's a genius, and they're all great. They're all bright. They all have gifts. But one thing that blew us away was just the things he'd been thinking about that no one knew. So I started a blog, and I just, for friends and family, so they could read what he was saying because they didn't know him. Nobody really knew him. And so that was super fun to start that. And then as he's gone through high school and college and he was writing essays, I mainly just put his essays up. The last one is up. He took a class at college on mindfulness, and he wrote an essay on the meaning of happiness. And he likes to, so the name of his blog is www.returningjames.com. Returning James, one word. I named it that. I'll be a little spiritual for you for a minute, but there's a story in the Bible about Jesus going to a town, and a widow has just lost her son. He's died, and he says to the widow, "Don't cry." And he touched the boy. It was a young man. He sat up and he began to speak. That's the word in the Bible. He sat up and he began to speak, and he returned him to his mother. And I always wanted James to be returned to me. So that was the name of the blog once he started communicating. I'm going to make you cry twice.
We'll share it. If that's okay with you, that other parents or individuals can read what he has to say. I'm very interested myself. Is that okay?
You know what? His blog is on a bunch of sites. It's open, and it's amazing to me. He gets like 200 viewers a month. I don't know who's looking at it. I think since the Speller movie came out, but yeah, you're welcome to look at it. It can go up. So wow. Yeah, so he writes about all sorts of things. He's not. I want to say this to parents. He's so normal on the inside. He's like you and I on the inside, but he still just hasn't had a typical life. So he doesn't talk, when he expresses himself, he doesn't express himself in a strange, a strange way. To me, he's not neurodivergent. To me, he's a person that was typical and was injured. But he also, even with the board, can't live a normal life. I can't describe it. Like we still have, he has to be regulated and he has to feel okay to be able to use the board. And so that makes me sad, but I just don't want anybody listening to this thinking, oh, my son or daughter will never get there. It's not like he's all fixed, but he's a million times better since I met you two.
All right. Well, we might have you back again in a year or so and see what happens. Yeah. Follow your story, your journey. It's really
see what happens with him.
Privilege to be involved in your family.
Well, thank you all. I told you this. I don't know if I was being recorded, but there's a big shift that's occurred, and I always knew it would be from within the community. And I appreciate the fact that you've done it without any real personal gain. You've done it for others. You've done it for the kids. For your own kids. I hope both your kids are doing well.
Sure thing, yeah. Well, thank you, Brooke. You're incredible. Never lose your courage and your faith. It's been a privilege. You've done incredible work. Say hello to James. We'll visit his blog, and let's continue to work hard.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Brooke, so much.
You're welcome, Alex. Talk to you later, I hope.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.